I lost my baby on a Tuesday. By Thursday, my parents were posting Instagram photos in matching pink and blue outfits, throwing confetti at my brother's gender reveal party. They never even called me, not once. And I know that sounds like something out of a soap opera or some twisted fictional drama, but this was my real life. I was bleeding alone in an emergency room while they were popping balloons and popping champagne. And what happened next? Let's just say I rewrote the ending of our family story, using a will, a lawyer, and a truth they never saw coming. But to understand why I did what I did, you need to know what led up to that moment. I'm the oldest of three, the responsible one, the planner, the rock. At least that's what everyone used to say before I stopped playing along. My younger brother Ben was the golden child. He always was. He could fail a test, crash a car, get someone fired, and somehow he'd still walk away with applause. But me, I got straight A's, worked 2 jobs in college, stayed out of trouble, took care of our sick grandmother for 3 years. And still somehow I was always just there. Never praised, never prioritized, just background noise. But I never resented Ben, at least not at first. He was charming, funny, charismatic, the kind of guy people wanted to like, and to his credit, he never asked to be put on a pedestal. Our parents just hoisted him up there like he was born with a spotlight. Then came my pregnancy. It was unexpected, but not unwanted. My fiancé Ryan and I had been planning a wedding, but life decided to skip ahead. We were terrified but excited, until we weren't. I started spotting at 10 weeks. Cramping, anxiety. Something didn't feel right. The ER confirmed it. No heartbeat. Just silence. And I'll never forget that silence. Not just in the room, but from everyone I thought would show up. I texted my mom. No response. Called my dad. Straight to voicemail. I even tried Ben, even though he was never really the comfort type. He sent me a thumbs up emoji and said, "Sorry sis, Mom said not to tell you yet, but we're doing the gender reveal this weekend. Hope you can make it." Hope I could make it. Make it? I had just watched my baby die on a monitor. I was still bleeding when I saw the posts. My mom holding a sign that said Team Boy, my dad with blue paint on his nose. Ben's girlfriend holding her belly like royalty. Laughter. Fireworks. A damn drone shot over the backyard. And I just stared. Completely invisible in my own family's timeline. I didn't even get a condolence text. They didn't mention me. Not once. I felt like I had disappeared. Ryan was the only one who really saw me, who held me, who stayed up with me during those dark, heavy nights when the world felt muffled. "I'm so sorry, baby," he whispered, holding my hand. "You don't deserve this." I didn't. But here's the thing. I wasn't just mourning my child. I was mourning the version of family I thought I had, because in those days after the miscarriage, I realized something deep in my bones. They didn't forget me. They just didn't care enough to remember. When I confronted my mum weeks later, her words drilled into my chest like a screw. "Oh, honey, we didn't want to ruin the celebration. You wouldn't want to bring down the mood, would you?" Bring down the mood. Imagine that. Your grief, an inconvenience, your pain, a potential party foul. I smiled, I nodded, I left. But inside something shifted, something cold, something calculating. And that's when I started making calls. Legal calls, financial calls. Because here's what they didn't know. While Ben was out there posting Instagram reels and TikToks with his daddy-to-be hashtag, I was quietly becoming the sole executor of my grandmother's estate. Yeah, that grandmother, the one I took care of while they all didn't have time. The one I fed, bathed, consoled, held hands with when she forgot her own name. She left everything to me. And when I say everything, I mean everything. But I didn't touch a dime. Not yet. Instead, I waited. Waited until the baby was born. Until the family gathered again. Until they needed something. And when they did, I let the will do all the talking. You won't believe what was inside. The baby was born in May, a healthy boy with Ben's smirk and his girlfriend's deep brown eyes. They named him Jackson, and my parents acted like he was the second coming of Christ. "We have a grandson," my mom squealed in the group chat I was still mysteriously added to, even though no one had texted me in months. Every day was a new photo, new announcement. Jackson's first yawn. Jackson in his lion onesie. Jackson meets the dog. I stayed silent, not out of bitterness, but clarity. Because after that day in the hospital, I saw it all for what it was. I wasn't family to them. I was filler. And the only person who ever made me feel like I mattered was now gone. But grief has a strange way of sharpening your mind. What I used to ignore, I now noticed with razor focus. And what I noticed was that Ben was in trouble. He and his girlfriend weren't married. She'd dropped out of nursing school. He'd lost his job a month before the baby came and was suddenly consulting, which is usually code for I have no income. But you'd never know it from the outside. Their social media screamed luxury. Matching robes, cute brunches, daddy blogger posts. My parents, eating it up. And then, one night in July, I got the call from my dad. "Hey, sweetheart," he started, all warmth and false concern. "How have you been holding up?" Holding up? The last time I spoke to him, he told me to be strong and hung up. That was 4 months ago. I said nothing. "Well," he cleared his throat, we're wondering if we could maybe talk sometime soon. It's about the house." Ah, there it was. See, my grandmother didn't just leave behind a few old teacups and a dusty condo. She left behind a fully paid-off home in a gentrifying neighborhood now worth over $1.6 million. And since I was her caregiver for 3 years, she'd made it clear, in writing, that the property, the assets, and her savings were mine. Not shared, not split, just mine. My parents didn't expect that. They thought they'd manage the estate, use the house for family purposes, maybe let Ben move in while he figured things out. Of course, I'd be fine with that, right? Wrong. I met them at the house right after the will had been finalized. The living room still smelled faintly of lavender and old wood polish. My grandmother had loved that scent. The curtains were still the same, pale yellow with tiny roses stitched in. Her favorite teacup was on the mantel. I'd left it there on purpose. My mum looked around like she was already redecorating. My dad walked in like a real estate agent giving a tour. "Ben?" He showed up 20 minutes late in sweatpants and asked if the Wi-Fi was still working. "We were thinking," my mum began, "that this space could be perfect for Jackson. You know, raise him with family around. Maybe update the backyard. Build a little nursery upstairs. It's not yours," I said flatly. They blinked. "Excuse me?" she said, laughing like I was joking. I pulled out a folder, slid it across the table. "This is the will. Grandma left it all to me. The house, the accounts, everything. There is no trust, no shared ownership, no loophole. I had it reviewed by 3 separate lawyers." Ben snorted. "Wait, you're not actually going to keep it all, are you? That's not fair. You're not even using it." "I was using it," I said quietly. "I lived here. I cared for her here. I watched her forget her own name here, while you all were too busy." My dad stiffened. "That was a difficult time for everyone." "No," I interrupted. "It wasn't. It was only difficult for me. You visited twice in 3 years. Ben came by once to drop off laundry, and when she died, I was the one who found her." The silence was like static. "You can't just hoard it all," my mum whispered, her voice rising. "Ben has a child now, a family. Don't you care?" "Did you care when I lost mine?" Her mouth snapped shut. I let that hang. "Let me guess," I said, staring at Ben. "You were counting on this house, planning to live here, raise Jackson here, maybe even sell it someday." He didn't answer. And that's when I laid down the final card. "I'm selling it." Their heads snapped toward me. "What?" Ben shouted. "You can't do that." "I can, and I will. The listing goes live next week. The proceeds are mine. I've already spoken to agents. My mum looked like she'd swallowed glass. My dad went pale. But where will Ben go? She demanded. Not my problem. They started pleading, bargaining. I stood up, and as I walked to the front door, I paused under the archway where my grandmother used to keep her photos. Photos she replaced every season, always including one of each grandchild. I took down the frame with my picture in it, and left theirs behind. They chose a party over my pain. I chose freedom over their expectations. But the biggest twist? They still had no idea what else the will said, because tucked into the final page was a clause that would shatter the golden boy fantasy for good. And it involved something Ben did, something my grandmother knew, that would make Who Got the House look like a warm-up act. You'll never guess what it was. The clause was buried on page 11, tucked between paragraphs about bonds and jewelry, trusts and residuals. Most people wouldn't have noticed it, but my grandmother knew exactly what she was doing, and so did I. Contingent on disclosure, it said. That was the phrase. Disclosure of what? Fraud. Specifically, bank fraud committed by Benjamin Harper 6 months before her death, when he borrowed her debit card, withdrew over $9,400 from her account, and lied about it for weeks. I know because she told me. Sat me down with her trembling hands and tear-filled eyes and said, "He used me, baby. He used me like I was a damn ATM, and I don't want him to get a single cent." I remember the shame in her voice, the heartbreak. She was losing her mind slowly, but that moment was sharp, clear, real. She wrote it into the will. If any party listed in this document is found to have committed theft, coercion, or manipulation against the deceased, their inheritance, if any, shall be immediately revoked and reallocated to the named executor. That was me. But here's the part that made it nuclear. She left proof. Receipts. Bank statements. A handwritten note in her own shaky handwriting. Ben had stolen from her. And now, legally, he couldn't touch a dime. Not the house. Not the bank accounts. Not the investments. He had no idea. So I waited until the next family dinner, a desperate attempt by my parents to rebuild the bridge, held in the same house they thought they were about to reclaim. They made pot roast. My mum brought out that fake hospitality smile. My dad poured wine like we hadn't had a nuclear fallout just weeks ago. Ben was late, as usual, and when he walked in, he acted like he owned the place, swinging the baby carrier onto the couch, tossing his keys on the counter, smirking at me like we were buddies again. "Glad you came to your senses," he said, grabbing a beer. I took a deep breath, pulled the folder from my bag, the same one from before, but this time with a bright red tab on the final page. "I'm not here to talk," I said. "I'm here to finalize everything." My parents went rigid. Ben raised an eyebrow. "Finalize what?" my mum asked, her voice barely a whisper. I slid the papers forward. "Here's the signed sale agreement for the house. It goes to closing in 30 days. And here," I flipped to the final page, tapping the clause, "is the part you really need to see." Ben leaned in, then froze. He looked up at me, confused, then panicked. "What the hell is this?" "It's Grandma's contingency clause," I said, keeping my voice steady. "The one about fraud, theft, manipulation." My mum grabbed the papers, eyes scanning, her face drained of colour. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "You can't just accuse him." "I'm not accusing him, Grandma did. In writing, with documentation. And I had it verified." Ben's jaw clenched. "You don't have proof." "Oh, but I do." I pulled out the copies, bank records with flagged transactions, withdrawals in Ben's zip code, security footage receipts. And the kicker? A note signed in her handwriting. "Benjamin stole from me." I am afraid of what he will do when I confront him. If anything happens to me, I want the truth to be known. My dad put his hand on the table like he needed something to steady him. She never told us this. She didn't trust you," I said bluntly, "because when it mattered, none of you were there. I was." Ben stood up. "This is bull's. She was old. She was confused. She was probably... She was sharp enough to write a legal document, I cut in. Sharp enough to know what you did. Sharp enough to change the course of your life with one paragraph. He lunged toward the table, snatching the papers, ripping them. It didn't matter. I had originals, digitals, lawyer-certified backups. The ink was dry and the clause had already been enacted. You ruined my life, he hissed at me. No, Ben, I said quietly. You did that yourself. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences. My mom burst into tears. Please, we can fix this. We're still family. Family. They loved to weaponize that word when it benefited them, but not when I was on the floor of a cold hospital room, bleeding and alone. Family, I said, doesn't abandon you in grief. Family doesn't celebrate new life while ignoring the one that was lost. And family sure as hell doesn't steal from an old woman and expect to be rewarded. I stood up, picked up my bag, walked toward the door, and right before I left, I turned back and said, You know, Grandma told me something else before she passed. She said, blood doesn't make you loyal. Behavior does. I walked out, let the screen door slam behind me, and I never looked back. The next time I saw Ben, it was on a public record, eviction notice, no assets, credit frozen. Turns out when you lie long enough, the truth doesn't just knock, it kicks the door down. But the real twist, that wasn't even the end. Because what I did with the inheritance next changed everything. I could have moved into the house, could have remodeled the kitchen, planted a garden, lived there in some nostalgic version of peace. But I didn't want a shrine. I wanted a life. So I sold it. $1.68 million. Clean. Closed in under 30 days. My parents thought I'd hoard it. Use it to rub it in or lord it over the family. That's how they'd behave. Instead, I used it to build something bigger. I donated a portion to the memory care centre that helped me take care of my grandmother, set up a scholarship in her name for nursing students focused on elder care, the same field Ben's girlfriend abandoned. Then I got to work on myself. Therapy. Actual, consistent therapy. I took a solo trip to Iceland. I started writing again, something I hadn't done since college. I even joined a support group for women who had miscarried and let myself grieve properly, fully, for the first time. No one handed me tissues out of obligation. No one rushed me to smile. There were women there who didn't know my name, but they saw me in a way my own family never did. And with what was left of the inheritance, I built a business. Not just any business, a retreat space for women who'd been through it, miscarriages, grief, betrayal, gaslighting, trauma. It's quiet, green, surrounded by trees, with big windows and warm blankets and shelves of books. I named it Mara's Light, after the baby I lost. The one no one acknowledged. The one they thought would break me. Instead, she became my compass. Funny how loss can clear the fog. Ben? Last I heard, he tried to crowdfund his way into launching a podcast. It failed. Then he tried flipping sneakers. That failed too. My parents? Still posting baby photos. Still pretending everything's fine. But behind closed doors, they're fractured. Distrust has a funny way of leaking into everything once it starts. And me? I'm not just fine. I'm free. Because the truth is, I spent so long trying to earn love from people who only gave it conditionally. So long hoping that one day they'd see me, truly see me, and decide I was worth the same celebration they gave to Ben. But the most powerful thing I ever did was stop waiting. They chose a party. I chose peace. They picked performative joy over my pain. I picked a purpose born from the ashes of loss. And in the end, it wasn't the house, or the money, or the clause in the will that changed everything. It was me. Finally realizing that family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by who shows up when it matters. So if you're watching this and you've ever felt invisible, disposable, second best, I want you to hear me clearly. You are allowed to walk away from people who only see your value when it benefits them. You are allowed to stop trying to fix people who broke you. And you are absolutely allowed to build a life that doesn't include anyone who made you feel like a burden. Comment below. Have you ever had to walk away from family to protect your peace? I read every story. This is a safe space. Like and subscribe if this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think differently about loyalty and self-worth. Share this with someone who's struggling to choose themselves. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is let go. And to the people who told me I was selfish for choosing myself, I don't need your approval. I have my freedom, my peace, my truth. And that's worth more than any party you forgot to invite me to.